I apologize in advance if I sound kind of stuffy throughout this. I'm getting sick, so. I'm Lorelai, and my report is based on the book The Homework Myth by Alfie Kohn. I was very intrigued by the synopsis on the back of the book because it talked about how research doesn't back up how homework helps students and that homework just gives students conflict. The report is based on a few chapters in part 2 of the book. I separated the chapters into 4 categories. 1 is asking the questions that count, 2 is better get used to it, 3 is idle hands, and 4 is what should we do. 1. Asking the questions that count. The reason we don't ask challenging questions about homework is because we don't ask challenging questions about anything. There are a few examples of this. 1 is people who write off politicians as a bunch of liars will not become active in politics because they don't want to think about the harder questions. Another example is when people say everything's bad for you to justify eating junk food. They don't want to get into the harder questions and the harder situations trying to eat healthier, so they stick to junk food. People are told to be passive like this from a young age, starting in school. We are taught to do what we're told and stay out of trouble. We've been trained to behave and memorize whatever we're told to memorize for any upcoming tests or quizzes. We don't ask if anything actually makes sense, just if it's going to be on the test. It never occurs to us because the majority of the work we do is only done to get the grade. This is what causes parents to believe that if their kids were not being graded on assignments, we'd never do them. We get praise for compliance, with the praise being the grades. Students and parents are invited to think in Goldilocks terms, too much, as in too little, too much, or just right. Because to everyone, it's known kids are going to have homework regardless. The more we think like that, the less likely we are to ask the real questions about homework. Questions like, do we know the homework we assign children is actually worth doing? Why do students have no opportunities to decide which of their homework assignments are actually going to be beneficial? And what if there was no homework at all? 2 is better get used to it. Students and parents both rely on this theory called better get used to it. It says that students should be assigned homework from a young age so that they will get used to doing lots of homework in high school and college. The only thing doing homework is useful for is to teach you how to do more homework. They are told they need to establish good study habits so that they can do homework more easily in the future. This can be compared to something like lifting weights, where the more you practice, the better you get to do more weight in the future. Teachers spew information into young children solely for the purpose of getting them ready for high school. Even if the way they're teaching isn't the most beneficial or effective to the students, they would do it regardless. This is how they justify giving young children hour-long assignments and tests. They think that the sooner they introduce these long work times, the better they will be in the future, but it doesn't actually benefit them. The educational systems in place currently view children as future adults rather than children. We're giving assignments to young children that aren't necessarily healthy for them. It ignores the fact that younger children lack certain cognitive and social proficiencies. They physically aren't ready for some of the work that is given to them, but people don't look at that because they need to get used to it. Long assignments they are told to complete aren't worthwhile and are generally unpleasant to do. To some teachers, they believe that the more valuable homework stems from if it's unpleasant or not. The better get used to it theory assumes that life is really unpleasant and that we shouldn't bother trying to change those conditions. The message that children get from this is that their unhappiness doesn't matter and that they need to suck it up and deal with it because they'll get more in the future. 3. Idle hands. Most everyone has heard their parents talk about how much they enjoy when their kids get homework over the summer. The most common reason is that it keeps them out of trouble if they're already preoccupied with homework. This stems from a general distrust with kids. Most parents get suspicious of what their children are doing with their free time and want to keep them out of trouble. Majority of adults view children as lazy, irresponsible, and rude, even when they're not. They antagonize children when a lot of it isn't true. There is also the assumption that children must be threatened with some form of consequence if they fail to comply. Traditional classroom management moves forward on this assumption, and it is based on a complete mistrust of children's motives. This suggests that qualities like generosity is unnatural and that children just want to do things for themselves. People don't support and nurture children's growth because they want their kids to stay out of trouble, even though they also complain that children just want the easy way out. And yet they continue to complain about that despite the fact that they have created an educational system that leads them to that. Teachers should be trying to come up with activities that leaves the students feeling engaged and excited to learn, rather than just learning because they feel like they need to have something turned in the next morning. Excessive schoolwork can distract students from feeling this way towards learning, which can hurt their development. 4. What should we do? Looking at the ideas given in this book, I've pulled together a few tips on how we can improve these issues. The first tip is to try and look behind what everyone else thinks and come to your own conclusions when it comes to homework. Look at research on your own and look inside your classroom to see how your students feel. Just don't automatically believe homework is good because every other teacher assigns it. My next piece of advice is to stop viewing children as future adults. If you view a child who is behind in their development compared to an adult, they won't get the support they need in school at all, and all of the homework and other assignments they have to do will only hurt them. Another tip is that you should try and find homework that is actually valuable to the student, rather than just giving them homework to prepare them for more assignments later. Homework, if used, can be a tool for learning rather than just busy work. Give your students valuable work so that when they do take tests, they will actually understand and know things rather than just cramming and memorizing. My last comment is that we need to challenge ourselves to change our viewpoints on children. Majority of people have extremely negative views on children, and that has affected their home lives and their education. Don't just assume that a child is up to no good when left alone. Thank you for listening.